Get comfortable. Close your eyes. Tonight, we are going somewhere that most people are not supposed to know about. Into the rooms behind the rooms. Into the meetings that were never announced. Into the handshakes that meant more than handshakes. The history you were taught in school has gaps in it. Carefully placed gaps. Tonight, we are going to look at what fills them. Not conspiracy theories. Not fantasy. History. The part that prefers the dark. Get comfortable and pay attention. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. The Origin. Human beings have always had secrets. This is not a cynical observation. It is simply true. From the earliest settlements, the earliest villages, the earliest communities of people living close enough together to need rules, there have always been those who gathered apart from the others, who met in the dark, who shared knowledge that was not shared with everyone, who recognized each other by signs that meant nothing to outsiders. This is not pathological. It is human. Knowledge has always been power, and power has always preferred a small room to a large one.
The earliest secret societies were not political. They were religious. The mystery cults of ancient Greece and Rome, the Eleusinian mysteries, the cult of Mithras, the Orphic tradition, were organizations built around knowledge that was revealed only to initiates. You did not simply join, you were chosen. You underwent tests, rituals, ordeals. You were shown things, experiences, visions, teachings that were not available to the uninitiated. And you were sworn to silence, absolute silence. The penalty for revealing the mysteries of Eleusis in ancient Athens was death. Not exile, not disgrace, death. And yet for over 1,000 years, from roughly the 15th century BC to the 4th century AD, the Eleusinian mysteries were celebrated every year near Athens, and their content was never revealed. Never.
1,000 years of perfect secrecy. Whatever they were showing the initiates in those underground chambers, it stayed there. To this day, we do not know exactly what happened during the central ritual of the Eleusinian mysteries. We have fragments. We have hints. We have the testimony of initiates who said only that what they experienced changed everything they believed about death. That they were no longer afraid. That they understood something they had not understood before. What was it? We do not know. The secret held for 1,000 years. That alone should tell you something about the power of secrecy, properly organized. Medieval Europe produced its own secret traditions.
The guild system, the organizations of craftsmen and tradespeople that dominated economic life from the 12th century onward, was built on secrets. The secrets of the trade. The techniques that distinguished a master mason from an ordinary stoneworker. the knowledge of how to cut a particular arch, how to calculate the load of a particular vault, how to dress stone to a precision that would hold for centuries. This knowledge was not written down. It was passed from master to apprentice in person, orally, practically, over years of work. And it was guarded ferociously because it was worth money, because it was worth power, because the man who knew how to build a cathedral was not replaceable. The Stonemasons Guild had signs and passwords and secret handshakes, not for drama, not for ceremony, not for the pleasure of mystery, but for practical reasons, so that a traveling Mason could prove to a new employer that he was what he claimed to be.
So that a master could identify another master without documents or references. The secrecy was functional before it was symbolic. It became symbolic later, much later, when the craft guilds declined and their rituals were adopted by men who had never cut a stone in their lives. This is the origin of the most famous secret society in Western history. But that is the next chapter. For now, the principle. Secret societies exist because knowledge is power. Because power prefers to operate unseen. Because there are things that cannot be said in public, whether because they are dangerous, or because they are profitable, or because they are true. And people who hold such things need somewhere to say them. They need a room, a locked room, with people inside it who can be trusted. And they need a way of knowing, beyond doubt, beyond the possibility of mistake, that everyone in the room can be trusted. This is what the rituals are for. This is what the oaths are for. This is what the signs and the passwords and the degrees of initiation are for. Not mysticism, not theater. Trust technology. The oldest trust technology humanity has ever developed. And it works. It has always worked. Which is why it has never stopped.
Chapter 2: The Freemasons. If you want to understand secret societies, truly understand them, not the Hollywood version, not the conspiracy theory version, not the version where shadowy figures control everything from a room full of candles and globes, you begin with the Freemasons. Because the Freemasons are real. They are the largest and oldest fraternal organization in the world. They have been meeting in lodges for over 300 years. They are not particularly secretive about the fact that they exist. Their buildings, Masonic lodges, Masonic halls, Masonic temples, stand on main streets in towns and cities across the world. You have walked past them. You probably did not notice. And what goes on inside them? That is another question entirely.
The Freemasons trace their origins to the stonemason guilds of medieval Europe, the craft organizations we discussed in the previous chapter. The transition from operative masonry, actual men who actually cut actual stone, to speculative masonry, men who use the tools and symbolism of the stonecutter's craft as a framework for philosophical and moral development, happened gradually in the 17th century. By the time the first Grand Lodge was formally established in London in 1717, at a tavern called the Goose and Gridiron in St. Paul's Churchyard, the Freemasons were already something quite different from a craft guild.
They were a fraternal organization, a brotherhood, a place where men of different social classes and different religious backgrounds could meet as equals. This last point is more radical than it sounds. In 1717 England, this was genuinely revolutionary.
The Duke and the merchant and the doctor sitting at the same table, calling each other brother, treating each other as equals? This did not happen in public life. It happened in the lodge. The structure of Freemasonry is built on degrees.
You enter as an entered apprentice, the first degree. You advance to fellow craft, the second, and then to master mason, the third. Each degree involves a ritual, an oath, a dramatic ceremony that reenacts a symbolic narrative. The central narrative of Freemasonry is the story of Hiram Abiff, the master architect of Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem, who was murdered by 3 of his workers who wanted to extract from him the secret word of a master mason. He refused to reveal it. They killed him. The secret died with him. In the ritual reenactment of this story, which every man who becomes a master mason participates in, the initiate plays the role of Hiram Abiff. He is symbolically murdered. He is symbolically raised from the dead. The message is clear, even if the ritual is strange. Keep your oaths, even unto death, especially unto death.
The oath of a Freemason is the thing most people have heard about and most misunderstood. In the original 18th century versions, the penalties described for oath breaking were extraordinarily graphic, having the throat cut, the tongue torn out, the heart and vitals removed. These penalties were understood, even then, to be symbolic rather than literal. No Freemason has ever been physically punished for revealing lodge secrets, at least not by other Freemasons. The punishment for oath breaking is expulsion, exclusion, being cast out of the brotherhood. For men whose professional and social lives were deeply intertwined with their lodge membership, and for much of Freemasonry's history, this was absolutely the case. This was punishment enough, more than enough. The membership list of Freemasonry across its 300-year history reads like a directory of the Western world's most powerful men.
George Washington was a Freemason. Benjamin Franklin was a Freemason and used his lodge connections extensively in negotiating French support for the American Revolution. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was a Freemason. His opera, The Magic Flute, is saturated with Masonic symbolism. Voltaire was initiated into a French lodge just weeks before his death. Napoleon's brothers were Freemasons. The Duke of Wellington was a Freemason. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a Freemason. Winston Churchill was initiated in 1901 and remained a member for the rest of his life. 14 of the first 44 American presidents were Freemasons. The dollar bill, the one in your wallet, the one with the pyramid and the eye on the back, is covered in Masonic symbolism. This is not conspiracy theory. This is history. What does it mean?
Perhaps nothing beyond the obvious, that ambitious and educated men joined the most prestigious fraternal organization available to them, that they advanced through its degrees as they advanced through their careers, that they used their lodge connections the way people have always used their connections, to find business partners, to build alliances, to smooth the path. Or perhaps something more. Perhaps the shared rituals, the shared oaths, the shared symbolic language, created bonds between men that ordinary friendship did not, that could not, and that those bonds, invisible to outsiders, impenetrable to those who had not stood in the lodge and taken the oath, shaped decisions and policies and the course of history in ways we will never fully map. The Freemasons did not rule the world, but they knew each other. In a world where who you know determines what you can do, that is not nothing. That is very far from nothing.
Chapter 3: The Illuminati. The word Illuminati has become so polluted by popular culture, by music videos and album covers and YouTube documentaries and celebrity hand signs and Dan Brown novels, that it is almost impossible to discuss the actual historical organization anymore without first clearing away 20 layers of nonsense. So let us do that, quickly and completely. The Illuminati were real. They were founded on the 1st of May, 1776. Yes, the same year as the American Declaration of Independence, which has given conspiracy theorists material for 2.5 centuries, by a Bavarian professor of law named Adam Weishaupt. They operated for approximately 11 years. They were banned by the Bavarian government in 1785. They disbanded. They did not secretly continue. They did not go underground and take over the world. They ended.
The real story of the Illuminati is fascinating enough without the embellishments. Perhaps more fascinating. Because what Weishaupt was trying to do, and what he almost achieved, was genuinely extraordinary. Adam Weishaupt was born in 1748 in Ingolstadt, Bavaria.
He was educated by Jesuits, the Catholic order that operated its own extensive network of influence and control across Europe. And he grew to despise everything they represented. The Jesuits' power, their secrecy, their ability to shape the minds of the educated elite through control of the universities. Weishaupt saw all of this and thought, I can do this better. I can build an organization that uses the same techniques: secrecy, hierarchy, careful selection of members, graduated revelation of deeper teachings, but in the service of enlightenment rather than religious orthodoxy, in the service of reason rather than superstition, in the service of a world governed by rational principles rather than by kings and priests. He called his organization the Order of the Perfectibilists. He later changed the name to the Illuminati, the Enlightened Ones. He began with 5 members in a forest outside Ingolstadt.
Within a decade, he had between 2,000 and 3,000 members across Europe. Judges, politicians, doctors, intellectuals, military officers, in some of the most important positions in the most important states on the continent. His method was brilliant and frightening in equal measure. New members were not told they had joined the Illuminati. They were not told what the organization actually was or what it actually wanted. They were recruited gradually, carefully, over months or years through existing social connections. They were told only as much as their current level of the organization permitted. The deeper teachings, Weishaupt's actual political goals, his vision of a world without kings or priests, governed entirely by reason, were revealed only at the highest levels of initiation. By the time a member understood what he had actually joined, he was already deeply committed. He had already recruited others.
he had already revealed things about himself in the process of initiation that made leaving dangerous. The organization held him, not through threats, through investment, through the slow accumulation of shared secrets that made the Brotherhood feel necessary. This is not unique to the Illuminati. It is how every effective secret organization has always operated.
The Illuminati's infiltration of Freemasonry was Weishaupt's greatest tactical achievement. In 1780, he met a Freemason named Baron Adolf von Knigge, a skilled organizer and networker who became his most effective collaborator. Together, they began recruiting from existing Masonic lodges across Germany and beyond. The Illuminati did not replace the Freemasons. They nested inside them, using the existing structure, the existing network, the existing trust, and inserted their own teachings and agenda at the higher levels. A Mason, who was also an Illuminatus, would move through both organizations simultaneously, recruiting carefully, advancing the inner agenda while maintaining the outer appearance. At its peak, the Illuminati had members in the lodges of France, Italy, Austria, Poland, and beyond. In the courts of princes, in the offices of ministers,
In the editorial offices of the most influential publications of the Enlightenment. And then in 1785, a disgruntled former member revealed everything to the Bavarian authorities. The Elector of Bavaria banned the organization. Weishaupt fled into exile. His papers were seized and published. The organization dissolved, or appeared to dissolve. Here is where history ends and legend begins. Because the ideas did not dissolve. The network did not entirely dissolve. The men who had been Illuminati were still in their positions, still judges, still politicians, still connected to each other through bonds that a government ban could not simply erase. What they did next, whether they continued in some form, whether the French Revolution 4 years later bore their fingerprints, whether the thread of Weishaupt's organization continued underground, is exactly where the documented history runs out and the speculation begins. That junction between what we know and what we cannot prove is where conspiracy theories are born and where they live forever.
Chapter 4: Skull and Bones. There is a building on the campus of Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. It is called the Tomb. It has no windows. Its walls are thick stone. Its door is always locked. No one who is not a member has ever been inside it and described what they saw. It belongs to a secret society called Skull and Bones. And the men who have passed through its door, who have sat in its rooms and taken its oaths and participated in its rituals, have included some of the most powerful people in the history of the United States. This is not speculation. This is not conspiracy theory. This is a list of names. Skull and Bones was founded at Yale in 1832 by William Huntington Russell and Alphonso Taft.
Alphonso Taft's son, William Howard Taft, became the 27th President of the United States and later Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the only man in American history to hold both positions. He was a bonesman. George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st President, was a bonesman. His son George W. Bush, the 43rd President, was a bonesman. John Kerry, Secretary of State,
former presidential candidate, senator, was a bonesman. When Kerry ran against George W. Bush in the 2004 presidential election, both candidates were bonesmen. When journalists asked both men about their membership during the campaign, both gave essentially the same answer. It is so secret, I cannot talk about it. Two men running against each other for the most powerful position in the world. Both members of the same secret society they both refused to discuss. The American electorate was offered a choice between two bonesmen, and most of them did not notice.
Or did not think it mattered. Whether it matters, that is the question. The selection process for Skull and Bones is called tapping. Each year, 15 junior students at Yale are tapped, chosen for membership. They are approached individually, in secret, and offered membership. The criteria for selection are not published. They are not transparent. But the pattern across nearly 2 centuries of membership lists, which have been partially reconstructed by researchers over the years, suggests that Skull and Bones selects for a specific combination of qualities. Family connection, many bonesmen are the sons or grandsons of bonesmen. Achievement, academic, athletic, social leadership at Yale. And something harder to define, a quality of ambition combined with discretion. The willingness to want power and the wisdom to pursue it quietly. Once tapped, a new member is called a knight. Senior members are called patriarchs.
The initiation rituals, reconstructed from accounts of former members who broke their oaths, from a partial theft of documents in the 1980s, from investigative journalism, involve lying in a coffin, confessing your complete sexual history to the assembled membership, kissing a skull, taking oaths of absolute secrecy. The coffin ritual, the symbolic death and rebirth, echoes the Masonic ritual of Hiram Abiff, which echoes the Eleusinian mysteries, which echoes every initiatory tradition going back to the earliest human communities. The form changes. The function does not. You die as you were. You rise as one of us. And what happens in the tomb stays in the tomb. Always. The power of Skull and Bones is not mystical.
It is structural. Every year, for nearly 2 centuries, 15 of the most ambitious young men at one of the world's most elite universities, young men who are already connected, already privileged, already on a trajectory toward power, are bound together by shared rituals and shared secrets and absolute mutual loyalty. They go out into the world. They go into finance, into law, into politics, into intelligence. The CIA has had a disproportionate number of bonesmen since its founding. They rise. And when they meet another bonesman, in a boardroom, in a government office, in a foreign capital, there is something between them that does not need to be spoken. A shared language, a shared debt, a shared understanding that goes back to a stone building with no windows on a Connecticut campus. That is the power of Skull and Bones. Not a conspiracy, not a plan for world domination. Something simpler and more durable than that. A network. The most carefully constructed, most deliberately maintained, most consistently powerful private network in American history. Operating in plain sight. On a university campus. Behind a locked door with no windows. Since 1832.
Chapter 5. The Knights Templar. In the year 1119, Just 20 years after the First Crusade had captured Jerusalem for Christianity, a French knight named Hugues de Payens approached the King of Jerusalem with an unusual proposal. He and 8 companions wished to form a monastic order, not an ordinary monastic order of prayer and contemplation, a military monastic order, warrior monks, men who would take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and then strap on armor and fight. Their stated purpose was to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem. The roads of the Holy Land were extremely dangerous, and the pilgrims who traveled them were frequently robbed, attacked, and killed. The King of Jerusalem gave them quarters on the Temple Mount, in the area believed to be built over the ruins of Solomon's Temple. And so they became the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templar. What happened next is one of the most extraordinary stories in medieval history. Within 2 decades, from virtually nothing, the Knights Templar became one of the wealthiest and most powerful organizations in the Western world. How? Partly through donations. European nobles and kings gave them land, money, and resources on a massive scale. Fighting for God was fashionable. Supporting those who fought for God was a good investment in one's afterlife. But the Templars did something else that was genuinely revolutionary. They invented banking. Not literally. There were proto-banking operations before the Templars, but they developed and systematized a form of financial transfer that had never existed before at this scale. A pilgrim in France could deposit money at a Templar commandery, a Templar-controlled house, and receive a letter of credit. He would carry that letter of credit to Jerusalem. At the Templar house in Jerusalem, he would present the letter and receive the equivalent funds. He never carried actual money across thousands of miles of dangerous road. He could not be robbed of what he did not physically possess. The letter of credit was useless without the verification system only the Templars controlled. This is recognizably modern banking. This is what we do today every time we use a credit card, every time we wire money internationally, every time we trust that a number on a screen represents something real that we can access anywhere in the world. The Knights Templar built the prototype. In the 12th century, in the middle of the Crusades.
At their peak, the Templars had, by some estimates, 15,000 to 20,000 members and associates across Europe and the Holy Land. They owned land in France, England, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and the Levant. They had their own fleet of ships, their own ports, their own legal system. They answer to no king, only to the Pope. They could travel across borders without paying tolls or taxes. They could not be tried in any secular court. They were a state within every state, a sovereign organization embedded in every country in Christendom, owing allegiance to none of them. And they held the debts of kings. The King of France owed the Templars an enormous amount of money, money he had borrowed to finance his wars and his court and his ambitions. Money he could not repay. This financial entanglement, a king in debt to an organization he cannot control and cannot tax and cannot touch, is what ultimately destroyed the Templars. not heresy, not the loss of the Holy Land. Debt.
On Friday, the 13th of October, 1307, which is why Friday the 13th is considered unlucky, though this connection is disputed by historians. King Philip IV of France ordered the simultaneous arrest of every Knight Templar in France. Hundreds of knights were arrested in a single morning, including the Grand Master, Jacques de Molay. They were charged with heresy, with worshipping an idol called Baphomet, with performing obscene rituals at their initiations, with spitting on the cross, under torture, and the torture was severe and sustained. Many of them confessed. Under torture, people confess to whatever will make the torture stop. This was as true in 1307 as it has ever been. The Pope, under enormous pressure from Philip, dissolved the Templar order in 1312. Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake in 1314.
According to legend, and this may only legend, he cursed King Philip and Pope Clement from the flames, summoning them to appear before God within the year. Both men were dead within a year. Philip of France died at 46 from a hunting accident. Pope Clement died of illness 5 weeks after de Molay. Coincidence? Almost certainly coincidence. But the story has carried for 700 years because some stories are too precise to let go. What happened to the Templar fleet, the ships that were in the port of La Rochelle on the night before the arrests? No one knows. They sailed away. They were never found. What happened to the Templar treasury, the accumulated wealth of 2 centuries of donations and banking and trade? No one knows. When the French authorities arrived to seize the assets they had been promised, much of it was gone. Moved in the hours or days before the arrests. Where did it go? Scotland is one theory. The Scottish king at the time had been excommunicated by the Pope and thus had no obligation to carry out the arrests. Portugal is another. The Portuguese king simply renamed his Templar Knights the Order of Christ and continued operating. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, built a century after the suppression by descendants of Templar Knights, contains stonework of extraordinary complexity and symbolism. Researchers have been arguing for a century about what it means and what might be hidden there.
Chapter 6, Opus Dei. In the summer of 1928, a young Spanish priest had a vision. His name was Jose Maria Escrivá. He was 26 years old. He was in Madrid, and what he saw, or believed he saw, was an organization of ordinary Catholics, not priests, not monks, not nuns, but ordinary people living ordinary lives in the ordinary world, who would pursue holiness through their daily work, who would sanctify the world not by retreating from it, but by inhabiting it completely, who would be, as Escrivá put it, contemplatives in the middle of the world. He called his organization Opus Dei, the work of God. And within 70 years of its founding, it would become one of the most powerful, most controversial, and most secretive organizations within the Catholic Church. Opus Dei today has approximately 90,000 members worldwide.
It operates in over 60 countries. It runs universities, business schools, hospitals, secondary schools, and media organizations. Its members include politicians, judges, business leaders, academics, journalists, and military officers in countries across the world. In Spain, where it was founded and where it has historically had the deepest roots, Opus Dei members occupied key positions in the Franco regime for decades. The technocrats who modernized the Spanish economy in the 1960s, the men who transformed Spain from an isolated fascist backwater into a modern industrial economy, were predominantly Opus Dei members. They were nicknamed the Opus Dei government. In the United States, Opus Dei has been linked to conservative Catholic networks in Washington, in the legal community, and in the intelligence services. Robert Hansen, the FBI agent who was one of the most damaging Soviet spies in American history, was a deeply committed Opus Dei member.
This does not mean Opus Dei is a spy organization. It means that committed, ideologically driven people join ideologically driven organizations, and that sometimes those people do terrible things that their organization did not sanction. This is true of every large organization, but it is worth noting. What makes Opus Dei genuinely unusual, what separates it from an ordinary Catholic organization and gives it the character of a secret society, is its structure.
Most of its members are numeraries, unmarried celibate members who live in Opus Dei centers, give most of their income to the organization, and are directed in every detail of their spiritual and professional lives by Opus Dei directors. Numeraries typically do not reveal their membership publicly. They do not wear a badge or carry a card. They move through the professional world as ordinary people, as lawyers, doctors, academics, journalists, while maintaining an interior life and a primary loyalty that their colleagues cannot see. Former members, and there is an extensive network of former members who have written about their experiences, describe an organization of extraordinary psychological intensity, of complete submission to the authority of directors, of a practice called mortification, the deliberate infliction of physical discomfort as a spiritual discipline, including the use of a cilice, a spiked metal chain worn around the thigh, and the discipline, a cord used for self-flagellation.
These practices are not secret. Escrivá wrote about them openly. But they are not widely known, and they contribute to the atmosphere of intense, bounded loyalty that makes Opus Dei function as it does. The Catholic Church canonized José María Escrivá in 2002, making him a saint in a process critics described as unusually fast and unusually unscrutinized. Opus Dei is formally a personal prelature of the Holy See, meaning it answers directly to the Pope, bypassing the local church hierarchies of every country in which it operates. It is, in structural terms, a state within the church, exactly as the Templars were
a state within medieval Christendom, with its own chain of command, its own finances, its own agenda. Opus Dei does not describe itself as a secret society. It describes itself as a path to holiness through ordinary work. These two descriptions are not mutually exclusive. An organization can be both a genuine spiritual movement and a closed, hierarchical, secretive structure that exercises significant power in the world. Opus Dei is both. It has always been both. And the tension between those two identities, between the public face of sanctity and the private face of power, is precisely what makes it so difficult to understand and so difficult to dismiss.
Chapter 7. The Rosicrucians. In 1614, a pamphlet appeared in Germany. It was called the Fama Fraternitatis, the fame of the brotherhood. It announced the existence of a secret brotherhood of wise men, the Brotherhood of the Rosicrucians, who had been operating in secret for over a century. They possessed, the pamphlet claimed, the complete secrets of nature, the ability to heal any disease, the philosopher's stone that turned base metals into gold, a universal language, complete knowledge of all the arts and sciences. And they were offering, for the first time in their history, to make contact with the outside world, to accept new members, to share their knowledge with those worthy of receiving it. Europe erupted. Scholars, philosophers, alchemists, physicians, hundreds of the most brilliant minds of the age began writing letters and pamphlets in response.
They addressed the Brotherhood directly. They begged to be admitted. They declared themselves worthy. The Brotherhood did not respond to anyone, because the Brotherhood, in all probability, did not exist. The Fama Fraternitatis was almost certainly a literary hoax, a thought experiment, a utopian fantasy dressed as a revelation, written by a small group of Protestant intellectuals in Germany, possibly including the theologian Johann Valentin André, as a kind of philosophical manifesto for the reform of European knowledge and society. A joke that got out of hand. A fiction that became real. Because even though the Brotherhood did not exist when the pamphlet was published, it existed within a decade. Because enough people believed in it to create it. This is one of the most remarkable things about secret societies as a category.
They do not need to pre-exist their mythology. The mythology creates them. People read the Fama Fraternitatis and wanted what it described: a brotherhood of wise men, a community of knowledge, a secret garden of genuine understanding in a world of ignorance and superstition. And so they built it. In the decades following the publication of the pamphlet, actual Rosicrucian lodges began to form across Europe. Men who called themselves Rosicrucians began meeting, writing, sharing knowledge.
They had no connection to the fictional original brotherhood of the pamphlet, because there was no original brotherhood. They were the original brotherhood, creating themselves in the image of a story. This is not as strange as it sounds. Most human institutions are created in the image of stories. Most nations, most religions, most political movements begin with a narrative, a founding myth, a story of origin that may be partly or wholly invented, and then build real structures on that invented foundation. The Rosicrucians simply did it more transparently than most, and faster. The Rosicrucian tradition, as it actually developed in the 17th and 18th centuries, was a blend of alchemy, Hermeticism, Kabbalah, Christian mysticism, and early science. Its practitioners were not cranks or charlatans, at least not exclusively. Some of the most significant scientific minds of the 17th century had Rosicrucian connections or sympathies. Francis Bacon, whose vision of a society dedicated to the advancement of knowledge prefigured the Royal Society and modern scientific institutions, wrote a utopian novel called New Atlantis that is saturated with Rosicrucian ideas. Isaac Newton spent more time on alchemy and esoteric biblical interpretation than he did on the physics and mathematics for which we remember him. His alchemical manuscripts, suppressed for centuries and finally auctioned in 1936, show a man obsessed with hidden knowledge, with the secret structure of reality, with the idea that ancient wisdom had been encoded in scripture and nature and was waiting to be decoded.
Newton was not a Rosicrucian by any formal membership, but he breathed the same intellectual air. He was part of the same tradition of people who believed that the surface of the world that everyone could see, concealed a deeper structure that only the initiated could perceive. Was he wrong? The history is, in some ways, the history of proving that he was right. That reality does conceal deeper structures. That the surface is not the truth. That those willing to look harder, to go deeper, to ask the questions that convention discourages, do find things that others miss. The Rosicrucians called this the secret knowledge. We call it research. The impulse is the same.
Modern Rosicrucian organizations exist today. The ancient mystical order Rosicrucis, known as Amorc, has members in most countries in the world. The Rosicrucian Fellowship operates from California. Others operate in France, Germany, and across Latin America. Whether they have any genuine connection to the 17th century tradition or to each other is disputed. What is not disputed is that they persist, that people still seek what the Fama Fraternitatis promised in 1614, a community of genuine seekers, a place where real questions can be asked, a brotherhood of those who know that the surface is not the truth. 400 years later, the same longing, the same search, the same locked door, and the same desperate desire to find someone who has the key.
Chapter 8. The Bilderberg Group.
Every year, in late spring, in a different country each time, approximately 150 people gather at a luxury hotel. The hotel is surrounded by security. Local police provide an outer perimeter. Private security provides an inner one. Journalists are not admitted. Recording devices are not permitted. Attendees agree not to discuss the specific content of what is said inside.
No press conferences are held. No official statements are issued beyond a brief list of general topics discussed. The meeting lasts 3 days, and then the participants disperse back to their governments, their banks, their corporations, their newspapers, and the world continues. This is the Bilderberg Group. It is not secret in the sense that it denies its own existence. It publishes the names of its participants after the fact.
It acknowledges that it meets. What it does not do, what it has never done in its 70-year history, is allow any independent observation of what actually happens inside the hotel. Whether this constitutes a secret society in the traditional sense, with oaths and rituals and degrees of initiation, is debatable. What is not debatable is its membership and its pattern of influence. The Bilderberg Group was founded in 1954. Its creation was driven by several concerns: the growing gap between American and European political elites, the rise of anti-American sentiment in Europe, the need for private dialogue between the Western powers during the early Cold War. Its founding participants included Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, who chaired the group for its first 20 years, the CIA's first director, Walter Bedell Smith, and a network of European politicians, bankers, and intellectuals. The name comes from the Hotel de Bilderberg in Oosterbeek, Netherlands, the site of the first meeting. Since 1954, the Bilderberg meeting has convened every year without exception. Its participant list across those 7 decades reads like a complete index of Western power. Every American president since Eisenhower has either attended a Bilderberg meeting before taking office or had close advisors who did. Bill Clinton attended in 1991, the year before he announced his presidential candidacy. Tony Blair attended in 1993, 2 years before he became Labor leader. David Cameron attended in 2008, 2 years before he became Prime Minister. The pattern, attend Bilderberg, rise to power, is consistent enough to have been noted by researchers across the political spectrum. The Bilderberg Group does not select leaders. That is almost certainly too simple a description of what happens.
But it provides a space in which people who are about to become powerful meet people who are already powerful, off the record, informally, without the constraints of public accountability, and form the relationships that will shape their decisions for decades. This is influence. Real, structural, consequential influence, operating entirely outside democratic oversight, with no minutes, no transcripts, no accountability. The Bilderberg Group's defenders say it is simply a useful forum, a place where busy, important people can talk frankly without worrying about how their words will be reported. A necessary space for the kind of honest dialogue that public life makes impossible. There is truth in this. Public figures cannot speak honestly in public. They need private spaces. This is human.
But when those private spaces become a regular, institutionalized, multinational gathering of virtually every significant power center in the Western world, and when that gathering operates in complete informational darkness, the question of democratic legitimacy becomes genuinely serious. Who decided that these particular people should meet privately every year to discuss the direction of the world? The answer is, they did. They decided it themselves, and no one has successfully challenged that decision in 70 years. This is what power looks like when it is confident enough to stop hiding. Not a secret society with rituals and oaths,
just a meeting, just a hotel, just a locked door and a security perimeter and a guest list that reads like the index of a history book. Every year, without fail, without explanation, without apology.
Chapter 9. The 9 Unknown Men. Not all of the world's great secret societies are Western. Not all of them trace their roots to medieval Europe, to the Crusades, to the Enlightenment, to the particular anxieties and ambitions of the Christian West. Some go much further back. Some, if the tradition is to be believed, go back further than recorded history, to empires that rose and fell before Greece was Greece and Rome was Rome, to knowledge systems that predate everything we consider the foundation of civilization. The legend of the 9 unknown men is one of the most persistent and least examined of these traditions. It comes from India. It is approximately 2,000 years old, and it describes an organization so old and so secret that by comparison, the Freemasons are a recent startup. The story begins with the Emperor Ashoka. Ashoka the Great ruled the Maurya Empire in the 3rd century BC, one of the largest empires in the ancient world, covering most of the Indian subcontinent. He was not a gentle ruler in his early years. His conquest of the region of Kalinga in approximately 261 BC was one of the bloodiest military campaigns in Indian history. The ancient sources describe 100,000 people killed, 150,000 deported, many more dying of disease and starvation in the aftermath. And then Ashoka walked through the battlefield. And he was, by his own account, in the edicts he left carved in stone across his empire, overcome with grief and horror at what he had done. He converted to Buddhism. He devoted the rest of his reign to nonviolence, religious tolerance, the welfare of his subjects and animals, and the propagation of Dharma, righteous living, across the known world. He is one of the most remarkable rulers in human history. And according to the legend, which was first popularized in the West by the French writer Louis-Jacques Colliot in the 19th century, and later by the science fiction writer Talbot Mundy in 1923, he also did something else.
He gathered 9 of the wisest men in his empire. 9 men of extraordinary knowledge. Scientists, philosophers, physicians, scholars of every discipline. And he charged them with a task: to gather, preserve, and advance human knowledge. All human knowledge. Every science, every art, every discipline. Each of the 9 was assigned a specific domain: propaganda and psychological warfare, physiology and the art of killing with a touch, the knowledge of which nerve struck in which way could kill a human being instantly, microbiology and biotechnology, alchemy and the transmutation of metals, the secrets of communication and light, cosmology and the structure of the universe, gravity and the secrets of flight. Each of these domains was recorded in a book. 9 books of secret knowledge, maintained, updated, and passed on from generation to generation by the 9 unknown men.
For 2,000 years, continuously, to this day. The legend holds that the 9 unknown men have shaped history from the shadows, intervening at crucial moments, suppressing knowledge that humanity was not ready for, releasing knowledge when the time was right. The invention of printing, the development of certain vaccines, advances in mathematics. Some researchers have claimed to find the fingerprints of the 9 in historical breakthroughs that appeared
seemingly from nowhere, at decisive moments. Pope Sylvester II, who introduced Arabic numerals and the concept of zero to medieval Europe, was rumored to have had contact with the Nine. Vikram Sarabhai, the father of the Indian space program, was said by some to have been a member. These claims are not provable. They are not meant to be provable. This is the nature of a legend that has survived for 2,000 years. It is not falsifiable. It is not verifiable. It simply persists.
Does the organization exist? There is no credible evidence that it does in the literal form described by Giacoilio and Mundi, but the idea it encodes, that there exists somewhere a repository of suppressed knowledge, maintained by people of extraordinary ability who have chosen anonymity over recognition, who work for the benefit of humanity over the very long term, this idea is not absurd. It is, in fact, a reasonable description of what science, at its best, tries to be.
The accumulation and preservation of knowledge across generations. The deliberate suppression of knowledge deemed too dangerous for immediate release. The slow, careful, anonymous work of understanding. The 9 unknown men may be a legend, but the function they perform in the legend, the guardianship of knowledge that could destroy as easily as it could save, is a function that someone, somewhere, is always performing. Whether they meet in a room and call themselves the 9, or sit in laboratories and committees and editorial boards and never meet at all, the function is real. It has always been real. Because knowledge has always been dangerous. Someone's always had to decide what to do.
Chapter 10. Do they still rule us? We have come a long way tonight. From the mystery cults of ancient Greece to a luxury hotel with security perimeters in 21st century Europe. From the stonemason guilds of medieval cathedrals to a windowless building on a Connecticut campus. From Adam Weishaupt in a forest outside Ingolstadt to Jose Maria Escrivá in a Madrid apartment having a vision. From Jacques de Molay burning at the stake on a Paris island in 1314 to 9 legendary guardians of knowledge, whose books may or may not exist. We have looked at the oldest and most persistent human impulse, the impulse to gather in secret, to share what cannot be shared in public, to build structures of power and knowledge that operate beneath the visible surface of the world. And now, the question that everything leads to: do they still rule us? Are the secret societies still there? Still meeting? Still deciding? Still shaping the world from rooms we are not permitted to enter? The answer is complicated, as it always is when the question is honest. Some of them are demonstrably still there, and demonstrably still powerful. The Bilderberg group met last year. It will meet again this year. Its participant list will include heads of government, central bank governors, technology billionaires, media owners, and military commanders. They will speak off the record for 3 days and then disperse. And the decisions that shape our economies, our wars, our technologies, and our political possibilities will be made in the months that follow by people who sat in the same room, Whether those decisions were made in that room, whether the meeting itself is a decision-making body or simply a networking event, is a distinction that matters less than it might appear. The relationships formed in that room are real. The trust built in that room is real. The shared understanding of what is possible, what is desirable, what is to be avoided, that emerges from 3 days of frank, private conversation between the most powerful people in the Western world is real.
And it shapes everything that follows, even if no formal decisions are ever taken. Opus Dei still operates in over 60 countries. Its members still move through professional life without disclosing their membership. Its influence in conservative Catholic networks, in the Vatican, in certain governments, in certain legal and financial institutions, is real and ongoing. Skull and Bones still taps 15 Yale juniors every year. They still go into finance and law and politics and intelligence. They still know each other in ways that their colleagues do not. The Freemasons still meet in lodges on main streets in towns across the world. Their political influence has declined significantly from its 18th and 19th century peak, but their networks persist. Their mutual loyalties persist. Their preference for operating beneath the surface of public life persists.
But the deeper answer to the question, do they still rule us, is that the question itself may be slightly wrong. It assumes that ruling is something that happens in rooms, that power is located in a building, in a membership list, in a set of rituals, that if you could only find the right room and open the right door, you would discover who is really in charge. The uncomfortable truth is that power does not work this way. Or rather, it works this way and also many other ways simultaneously. The Bilderberg Group is real and consequential, and the financial system that determines the life chances of 8 billion people operates according to rules that no secret society designed and no secret meeting could easily change. The Freemasons have shaped the political institutions of the Western world, and those institutions now operate according to their own logic, a logic that their Masonic architects could not have predicted or controlled.
Power has always been both concentrated and diffuse, both visible and hidden, both the product of deliberate conspiracy and the accidental outcome of a million uncoordinated decisions. Secret societies are one node in this system, an important node, a persistent node, a node that has shaped history in ways we are still mapping, but only a node, not the whole system. What secret societies actually tell us, more than any specific claim about who controls what, is something about human nature. About the fact that people with power and knowledge have always preferred to exercise them in private. That trust is built in small rooms, not large ones. That the most consequential relationships, the ones that actually shape events, are rarely the ones conducted in public. That every official version of every story, every press release, every government statement, every corporate announcement is a simplified, edited, managed version of something more complicated that happened somewhere else first. This is not paranoia. It is not conspiracy theory. It is simply how power has always worked, how it works now, how it will work tomorrow. The room behind the room has always existed. The meeting before the meeting has always happened. The handshake
that meant more than a handshake has always been exchanged. And most of us, going about our ordinary lives, paying our taxes, following the news, voting in elections, are working with a version of reality that is true as far as it goes,
And does not go nearly far enough. Tonight, you have gone a little further. You have looked into some of the rooms. You have read some of the names on the lists. You have followed some of the threads. And what you have found is not a single secret, not a single organization with a single plan, but something more interesting and more unnerving than that. A pattern, persistent across centuries and cultures and continents. The pattern of people who know something gathering together, of knowledge becoming power, of power preferring darkness to light.
Of the same human impulse to control what cannot be controlled in public, expressing itself again and again and again in different names and different rituals and different buildings with different locked doors. The Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Templars, Skull and Bones, Opus Dei, the Bilderberg Group, the 9 Unknown Men. Different names, different centuries, the same room. The room that has always been there. The room you were never meant to know about. The room where the decisions that shape your life are sometimes made. Sleep well, if you can.